Thank you very much for the introduction, Jean-Paul. I'm always, it's always a tough act to follow, and I have to go after Marine doing a presentation. But hey, I'll do my best. Just to sort of introduce myself and UK Hospitality quickly. I'm sort of policy manager at UK Hospitality, and we are sort of essentially the trade body that represents the hospitality sector in the UK. So we have sort of 750 odd companies from right the way across the hospitality sector. So sort of pubs, bars, restaurants, hotels, cafés, you name it. We represent them, and sort of as a trade body, our role inevitably is to sort of advise our businesses and also sort of lobby the government to try and get the best deal for the hospitality sector. I will come on to sort of glass shortly, but I think before doing so, it's important just to highlight really sustainability in the hospitality sector in the UK and sort of where we are. So we, many years ago, partnered with an organisation called the Zero Carbon Forum to essentially sort of deliver the first roadmap to net zero in the sort of hospitality sector in the UK. Essentially within this, we sort of came up with some commitments. So our overarching commitment here that sort of many businesses signed up to was to reach net zero by 2040. And the slightly more pressing target, which is scary when you look at it on the slide, is a target in 2030 to remove all avoidable direct emissions, so our scopes 1 and 2, and that is coming pretty rapidly. Sort of generally in terms of where hospitality businesses are in meeting these targets, really, I think particularly sort of larger businesses are on track to reach that sort of overarching target, particularly for your sort of scopes 1 and 2. For reasons I'll talk about shortly, I think for your smaller businesses, this is sort of particularly challenging. And there's been sort of really, some quite slow progress, I guess, on scope 3, not for the lack of trying, but I think in the hospitality sector, around 90% of our total emissions are linked to our scope 3 emissions. So this really is an area that I know the sector's been working hard on over the past few years, but due to some of the cost pressures I'm going to come on to, some of the progress in that area has been a little bit slower. Just to talk about some of those cost pressures quickly, without sort of wanting to give anyone trauma related to the past few years, I think we're sort of all aware of some of the issues the hospitality sector and wider industry as well have had over recent years. I'll sort of refrain from mentioning COVID in this presentation, but it would feel strange not to. I feel like someone has to mention it in every presentation they do. But sort of energy continues to be a big cost challenge. Food price inflation in the UK also remains pretty high. So as sort of Maureen said in her presentation as well, some of those big external shocks do have quite a big impact in hospitality, and those are still having an issue sort of across Europe, but also the UK as well. Just to sort of hone in on the UK, over the past sort of couple of years, there's been some quite significant tax rises. So we've had areas like minimum wage rates, we've had national insurance, business rates, which are sort of some of your typical business taxes, I guess, that have all increased over recent years. And this is sort of where businesses are still dealing with debt from the last few years, energy inflation and all of those areas I mentioned. So we sort of survey our members, and our data has shown that there's been around 100,000 job losses in hospitality in the past 18 months. And this is sort of, particularly important when we're talking about a topic like this and sort of ensuring that there isn't any contamination of glass. When a lot of these changes rely on staff ensuring that they are sort of upheld when there is that high turnover of staff and job losses. It makes it sort of all the more tricky. Also, sort of a third of hospitality businesses are now operating at a loss. More than half have had to cut staff numbers. So again, just going back to that point I mentioned a moment ago about some of the burdens on staff, particularly in those staff who are there. And I guess the sort of point really is, why is this important to sustainability? Clearly, all of this is impacting businesses' ability to invest. This isn't just a sustainability issue. This is invest in, I don't know, staff, invest in expanding your operations. But clearly there are knock-on impacts to sustainability as well. I think with all the sort of best will in the world and the hospitality sector, I think it's really quite a forward-thinking sector and has always really sort of held the torch and leading the light in sustainability. A lot of businesses are struggling, and that's particularly why areas like scope 3, which tend to be a little bit more expensive and take up more time in ensuring that you're engaging with your supply chain to cut your emissions, and that's really why that's having an impact. And it is difficult, but hopefully over the next few years, things start to calm down a bit, and the businesses can focus more of that attention and investment in this area as well. Moving on to glass then, and what's happening in the hospitality sector. Just starting with some of the regulation that has happened and is happening in the UK over recent years. So last year we had a significant piece of regulation come in called simpler recycling, which essentially sort of mandated the consistent separate collection of various waste streams. One of these waste streams was glass, which has to be sort of separated at the point of collection, but sort of can be mixed in with other dry recyclable materials, so sort of plastics and metal particularly. Jean-Paul's mentioned extended producer responsibility quite a lot. There's loads going on in the UK on this at the moment, and we're sort of working pretty closely with the government to try and amend this policy, I guess, because it's been pretty problematic for the hospitality sector in the UK, and also your sort of bottle deposit return schemes, which you'll be pretty familiar with from a European context. But I guess the sort of point of this slide really is to sort of show that now is a really good moment for this campaign. Businesses are having to think about, as a result of this regulation, they are having to think about more about what they're doing with their materials, both from a cost point of view, also from ensuring that staff are aware of the regulations. And I think now for, cost reasons, but also sort of environmental reasons, there is a lot more of a focus of minimizing contamination, ensuring you're properly separating your waste streams. And I think that's really why it's a really timely moment for this campaign generally. And then just to sort of, I guess, reiterate that message, we're really pleased to be supporting this campaign. I think, one of the real benefits of that video we saw a moment ago is the fact that it can be personalized. And I think, being able to personalize it and remind businesses also not only of the importance of this campaign, but also of what some of their legal requirements are with some of the legislation that's been happening over the past few years is a real sort of benefit as well. And particularly across the UK now, where there's a lot more, starting to be a lot more conversation happening about reuse and the importance of reuse as well. It feels like a pretty timely thing. So really pleased to be supporting the campaign, and thanks for having me today.